Alright guys, we're going to cover a position called the reverse Z. It's basically a Yoko Sumigashi position. It comes up a ton out of takedown scrambles. It comes up when you get put on your back and you're trying to sit up and attain head height. Your opponent's trying to hold you down. This position comes up from close guard. It's a great way if you've been taken down into close guard. Obviously, it's applicable to MMA because if you're on bottom, you're losing. I first saw Ricardo Lamas use this position. I believe they have another name for it. I can't quite remember the name, but very, very strong. It's a position that's dynamic. We can sweep, we can stand up, and we can submit out of there. So to me, that's the perfect ingredients for a guard. And I really like it in the context of what we're producing today because in terms of seeking height, them trying to counteract your ability to get up leads to sweeps and submissions. So to me, in that sense, it's the perfect guard, and we can move in multiple directions with it. The simplest way to get there would be out of a closed guard, right? So I have Nick in closed guard. We can imagine Nick's just taking us down here. Obviously, I could sit here, I could play your traditional guard style games. But if I want to get going, I want to get moving immediately, one of the best ways to do this is we fake like we're going for a hip bump sweep. So I'm going to turn onto one hip. I'm going to climb up to an elbow, then a hand, and I'm going to reach. Instead of coming over the top to secure the elbow, go for a hip bump, that hand instead is going to reach behind Nick's head and secure his armpit here. And what I want to achieve with this grip is to break his posture as best as I can. I'm heavy on the back of Nick's head. On the same side that I'm on my elbow or hand, I need to keep that leg high. I want Nick to think he can pass out of here, but I don't want him to pass to the opposite side to my head control. If Nick steps over the wrong leg, if he steps over my left leg here, I have absolutely nothing. Obviously he's gonna arm triangle me, he's gonna fuck me up from here, right? So what I do is, when I secure my grips, is I leave my left leg high. The same side as the post I leave high, the other side I leave low. So you can see I'm turning my knee in here. What that does is Nick, no matter what rule set we're in, he obviously wants to progress position. So he's gonna take a step over that leg. As he does that, I place that knee to the outside. So I'm gonna remove my upper body grip so you can see where we've ended up here. You can see I've got a hook inside the groin here and my other leg's on the outside. So I call it the reverse Z because obviously we've got a traditional Z guard. We're applying the same principles from the other side. So I have a shallow hook with my foot here. I'm scissoring back with my other leg initially. Ultimately, I'm going to look to pummel this leg inside. So if you guys can see my left leg, ultimately I want to pummel it inside. But obviously we're in this closed guard position here. As Nick steps over this leg, I hook the inside of his groin. So that's what we're doing with our lower body. With the upper body, we're again breaking posture here. We have to break posture. If I'm weak with this elbow, Nick just literally circles to my back. And he kills that grip. But as you can see, wherever we are with an over back grip like this, if I can keep Nick's head down, now he tries to circle to the back, he cannot circle. If the arm's loose here, he lifts his head and he circles to my back and he starts to attain dominant position. So again, from that closed guard position, we've been taken down. I go for a hip bump, I switch in hips, and I cover that head. You can see the leg I do not want him to step over, the same side as the post, is high. The leg I want him to step over is low. As he steps over, I stay on my side, and I take an inside hook. So you can see my right foot, my inside foot is circled like a butterfly position here. And what I immediately want to do is go from elbow to hand and seek head height. And that outside foot, we want to just pummel it inside. So what we're doing here is my inside butterfly hook is a frame. So if Nick's trying to crush me here, he has to move through this frame. If Nick wants to circle out to his left, I'm hooking his leg. So he's got a bit of a problem here in terms of how to progress next. Circling is difficult because of our active hook. Squashing me is difficult because of the frame. And trying to circle to my back is pretty much impossible so long as I collapse his head. So this is basically our position here. And it can work in sort of a seesaw manner here. If Nick does pressure me down, we're able to get elevations. If Nick goes to sprawl back and tries to get weight off me, it makes it easier for me to attain height. So we have a dilemma here between us seeking height. He wants to squash me. He's vulnerable to overhead sweep. So we're going to get into sort of the game we can play from here. But it's a great way to start standing up. And it comes up out of a lot of scrambles too. If Nick shoots a double on me and takes me down, I'm trying to seek this height here and I can immediately attain this hook. So now we're basically ended up in the position out of a takedown scramble. Anytime I'm in close guard, I've been taken down, I seek this position. Anytime out of a scramble, someone lifts me, slams me, even out of a body lock, anything, I go for this position. It's even a great option out of a body lock pass. If I'm playing butterfly here, Nick shoots for the body lock, I commit to an outside hip, and now we're playing a totally different position, but yet you can see he's got the body lock here. So he's secured around my body, and we've found ourselves in this reverse Z position. Reverse C, super strong, super unorthodox, and we have multiple options from there. But the key here is we're using an armpit grip with a low elbow to collapse their head. Anytime someone wants to circle to the back, they have to lift their head. So we're collapsing that, we're killing that there. We have a frame in terms of the knee shield position, that reverse Z, and we have an active hook, kind of like a reverse butterfly hook position. And those three key ingredients of this position allow you to play what looks like a very bad, dangerous position. We're able to turn ourselves into an offensive grappler here. We have opportunities to get up, we have opportunities to sweep, and we have opportunities to submit, which we're going to cover next. Guys, let's look at a few different angles here because there's obviously interesting position and some of the positioning can be hidden from my own body, right? So we're just going to play around with a few different angles. You're going to see, I'm not going to show the setups again, but what I'm going to show is we're just going to move lightly here from multiple angles. So let's look at it. We'll look at it out of a situation as if Nick secured a body lock here. He secured the body lock. So I want you to pay really good attention to how if Nick's trying to rush me, I can extend this leg. So Nick's putting pressure into me. We have a frame here. This is an active frame and it's a strong frame. If Nick tries to circle, I've got a butterfly hook here. It's hard for him to circle out over that. And it would be risky for him to take explosive movements because you can see it's like a butterfly hook. It can off balance him here. When I first enter the position, my foot's on the outside. That's why I call it the reverse Z. It looks like a Z guard, but on the wrong leg. We ultimately want to pummel this in. We pummel this in because we can now post our toes on the ground to create that elevation here. And again, our outside arm is circled around the head here. I have to cover the head. We don't cover the head. Nick just simply circles to my back. He just circles around to my back. And he can circle to my back because he's able to get his head high. If we reverse the position here, if I've got the body lock on Nick, and he's got this reverse Z, if my head's trapped low here, it's very tough for me to circle to the back. If he's got a weak grip here, you see how that kills that grip and allows us to take the back. So what's key is we collapse the head. So let's look at a few different angles here. We're covering the head. We've got our active frame, knee shield, and we've got a little butterfly hook there in case they need a circle, in case we need to go overhead. And I'm always trying to post as high as possible. If I'm on my shoulder, it's going to be weaker than my elbow. If I'm on my elbow, it's going to be weaker than on my hand. So I'll really want you looking up as much as possible here. That's the battle from here. Very unorthodox position, very new, but comes up out of scrambles and people trying to pin each other and score for obviously the more modern rule sets of grappling. I know what you're thinking, I got to cover this immediately, and that is like, what if the attacker doesn't want to sit on the body lock here? What if he wants to pummel that arm out, take it over the shoulder, ultimately threaten an arm triangle, or put himself in a better position to take the back, or at least put himself in a better position to flatten you out and prevent the sweep? That's fine, we can deal with that. I'm going to show you how to deal with that now. So let's look at it from this angle here. So we're playing this position here, right? Like a lot of guys are going to commit to the body lock here. They really believe, maybe they set it up out of a body lock pass, maybe they're very comfortable with this positioning here and they keep their arms here. That's fine, we deal with that. That's basically where we would like their arms best. But sometimes if we're not paying attention, Nick can take his right arm and he can throw it over my shoulder here. And that's a great way to flatten me out. And obviously if he flattens me out here and connects his arms, he can start setting up an arm triangle. I would say you're not going to get submitted here so long as we have this frame. Nick, to complete the arm triangle, he needs to send weight from this shoulder into my neck. And that's what's going to strangle me here. So if Nick squeezes really hard and my knee shield's weak, you can hear it in my voice how he's already putting pressure on the choke. But if I extend my knee shield here, Nick's trying to strangle me, I'm keeping his body away from me. I'm keeping his weight off me. And he cannot squeeze me effectively here. So if you do get caught in this position, so long as we maintain this hook and we maintain a strong frame, obviously if I'm weak here and Nick circles out, immediately we're going to get submitted, right? So be very, very careful from there that your frames are good. But we're sitting up. We know that this is a possibility. So I'm paying attention at all times so that if Nick ever unlocks his hands and he reaches over, I'm going to switch hips and I'm going to turn that into an underhook, and we get a very, very easy butterfly sweep to come on top here. So we've got to anticipate that that's a response. People usually only try this one time, they get reversed out of there, but they do think it is a very, very good attack, and it is, unless we can anticipate it right. So we're playing this position and Nick gets smart, he thinks on a counter. We switch hips, we keep that head covered. So if we look at this angle here, I'm keeping his head covered as I reach as far as I can. Ultimately, I won't keep Nick's head covered throughout the entire transition, but keep the armpit. So as we go to sweep and Nick's head comes out, as long as I'm still controlling that far arm, the head post isn't enough. If I let go of everything here and Nick posts that arm on the ground, he's able to achieve height and kill our sweep here. But I'm covering the head and only his head pops out. I keep his arm. And we're able to hit butterfly sweeps to come on top. So again, we need to read that this is likely and counter it. So I get up and quickly goes for it. Sometimes the head remains trapped, sometimes it doesn't. Either way, we sweep and we sweep into a very good pinning position because we have the underhook here. So that's your answer to if guys want to throw in a claw grip or want to threaten an arm triangle. Anticipate it, catch it with an underhook, and we'll use it to sweep them. Typically speaking, they'll go for it once or twice and they'll try to come up with other strategies rather than just throw an arm over the top to pin you. Let's talk about the key goal basically throughout this entire position, the key movement that leads to every other attack from here. And that is we have to threaten getting up. We always have to put the fear in our opponent that we're trying to get up and they have to actively hold us down. And again, for them to actively hold us down, they have to change their body position, have to change their weight distribution, and that is what leads to other attacks. If my opponent doesn't truly believe I want to get up, they don't have to change their body positioning to hold me down, and then we won't get the attacks we want. But again, the key here is that from the second we get these grips, we're heading in this direction, and that's going to allow us other opportunities. It can allow us opportunities just to get up and separate. It can allow us opportunities where we get up and our opponent has to mat return us again, fatiguing them. They're going to be fatigued if they have to actively hold you down versus you just hold yourself down. And we also have opportunities to get to the front head here because as we heist, we can stretch their grips and make them post. So let's take a look at that. So we're in our reverse C position. Never hang out here on the elbow. The second you're here, start getting high. So how do I want to get up and what positioning of Nick Ortiz's body allows me to get up? We're going to have a dilemma here. And we're going to cover this next in the overhead sweep. Well, we can take him overhead. Obviously, we have an active butterfly hook here. If Nick feels that he's going to get overhead swept, what's he going to do? His hips are going to go low and back. When his hips are low and back, there's less body weight on us. So it's much easier for me to bounce up to a knee. And what I can do when I bounce up to a knee, depending on the power of his grip, is I can slide 2 legs backwards and use that elbow grip on the back of his head to enter the front head position here. So obviously he's tight here, but when he's sprawling back, fearing being overhead swept, and we sprawl out, his hands stretch and he's forced to post. So we're here. See, Nick's weight's back. If I were to try to sweep him overhead here, I'd never get it. But because his weight's off me, I can easily come up, to a knee and immediately slide back to secure the front head. We go straight into our front head attacks. Sometimes Nick's weight's back, but his elbows are very tight here. So when that's the case, we're on an elbow, we come up, I'm gonna come to a knee, and I'm gonna immediately stand up. Obviously Nick has a choice here whether to follow me, but I'm able to get up. And we're gonna have some scrambling positions here where we can sweep them, we can throw them, we can sit back down and go for an overhead sweep. But we need our opponent to believe that he has to hold us down. It's a transitionary guard where we're always on our way up, and how his body changes in this scenario leads us to other attacks. So again, if Nick's fearing the overhead, I need to come up to a knee and ultimately slide back to a front head, applying pressure, or just get up. We can even potentially separate straight away here. But again, this isn't going to be a clear technique, but just to see, it's what we're making him believe we want to do. So when I have this position here, we've come up, elbow to hand, I bounce in a little bit to get my knee back. From here I can stand up, or from here if I want to test his grips for a front head, I slide both knees back and secure the front head position. And you're going to see how Nick, fearing this, leads me into our follow-up attacks. And the first follow-up attack will be an overhead sweep. All right, so we covered how to get up, or the threat of getting up from the reverse C position. Now we're going to cover what's called the Yoko Sumigaeshi. This would be a specialty move of Nick Ortiz. Nick Ortiz has been known to put the gay in Sumigaeshi. So we're going to use this. We're going to use the threat of standing up to change our opponent's posture, and it's going to take him overhead. It's going to make it easier to take him overhead. So let's take a look at it. So we've got our reverse C position here, right? So I want you to pay attention to Nick's hips in proportion basically to where his shoulder line is, right? If his hips are below his shoulders, that's an indicator that it's going to be easier to stand up than sweep. If I'm threatening to stand up and Nick starts applying forward pressure in, his hips start to come above his shoulder line, right? What that allows us to do, it means that he's going to be top heavy. It means that when I elevate my leg, he's going to be easier to lift than when his hips are below his shoulders here. When his hips are below his shoulders, it means there's less weight on us, which makes it easier for us to stand up. Again, if his shoulders are above his hips, this is easy. If his hips are above his shoulders, this is going to be easier. So I want you to think about these two, right? So Nick's got a body lock here. We're threatening to get up. Obviously, I have to have a hand on the floor to threaten to get up. So I'm trying to get up and I feel it's difficult, and I feel it's difficult because Nick's driving weight into me. So what I want to do is take my hand off the ground and grab his elbow. His elbow, we want to trap him here. I don't want to go to sweep him and Nick opens his hands and posts, because that's going to keep his hips back. So what I need to do is secure the elbow, and now as he drives back into me, I'm going to kick him over his right shoulder. And we're able to come up on top and secure the sweep. Again, this is going to look very complicated, and you might find it difficult at first, but it's just a lack of understanding of what to do and when to do it. I cannot emphasize enough that the only way you're going to take someone over is with the threat of getting up. So this is why we need good training partners, obviously fighting for top position. If you want to be on top, you want to remain on top, and you want to be able to practice pinning people, you have to understand this battle here. Obviously, if Nick didn't care about being swept, if he didn't care about being on top, this game would be difficult. But the fact is, Nick's put me on my butt, he wants to keep me there, and he wants to pass and submit me from here. So with that understanding in mind, Nick knows the higher I get off the ground, the further away he is from a submission, or at least the further away he is from a high percentage submission, right? So when I start to come up, Nick's like, fuck that, I'm keeping him down. And that's when we need to secure the elbow, and we need to take him overhead. And we can potentially go straight to mount and come on top. So again, very, very high percentage game to play here. And again, you need to build this instinctually. So if me and Nick were wrestling and Nick puts me down to my ass, I want to be climbing for height. And if I can get that inside hook, I'm threatening to get back up. He's like, that's not happening. We can take him straight over the top, right? So just because your butt hits the ground doesn't mean the wrestling scramble is over. We can play positions like the reverse C to get straight back up. We can be taken down into close guard, set up a reverse C, threaten to get up. And when our opponent wants to keep us down, they become top heavy. And when they're top heavy, we can take them overhead and take advantage of their vulnerability and posture to secure us a sweep. All right, so we can use the overhead sweep to obviously secure sweeps, but we can also use the overhead sweep to engage leg attacks. And again, leg attacks, I mean, the entire guard and ability to sweep from there is unorthodox. And obviously as people adjust to this positioning and it becomes the norm, you're gonna have to become more unorthodox. And attacking the legs out of these elevations is a great way to do that. Obviously it's a unique way to elevate someone, so we're gonna have the element of surprise there. So there'll basically be two ways I can secure the legs. I can secure the legs in the initial stages of the sweep, or I can secure the legs off of the sweep straight into a back step, right? So I have Nick Ortiz here, and we begin the elevation, right? And again, the elevation, I always want you to build it from trying to stand up and your training partner drives into you. So we can start to elevate Nick here. So you can see, depending on at what point in the transition we catch her, if Nick's hips are already going over, I'll follow him and keep my leg in between his legs, and we can easily take a scoop grip or an underhook grip and pull him back in with engaged leg attacks from here. So again, I don't want you to have basically the goal that we're going to catch the legs early, we're going to catch the legs late. I just want you to catch the legs whenever you can. So if I see the knee here, I'm going to grab it and secure the leg, or if I really get a powerful sweeping motion going and I really want to stay on the legs, the key is just keep your leg in between. So I overhead Nick, my leg's still in between. It's a perfect back step here. And we can pick up those legs straight away. Do a few different angles of this one. I just need to keep my leg in between and we can secure the leg attack here. Or if we want to go early, all I need to do is at least create a little bit of elevation. When we elevate him, I sort of bring his hips to my left shoulder and we can secure the legs here. And obviously it's hard for Nick to sprawl because I'm still controlling his head. Immediately look to secure the second leg. So we can use these elevations to create leg attack opportunities. And it can be early in the sweep or late in the sweep. Elevate in knee pull, elevate over the top and land in a back step. All right guys, so let's cover two other attacks, standing attacks we can do with this reverse Z position. But basically, once we stand up, it's basically Nick with a rear body lock and me with this over back grip where I'm still holding onto the lats, still trying to break his posture. And what that's going to do is obviously give us a bit more wiggle room, a bit more time at the top here. So if we look at it from the top, again, two attacks we can do from here. So let's say I start to come up and Nick's hips stay on the floor. What does that mean? That means we're just going to pop straight up. So I can come up to a knee and say, for example, I feel like Nick's grip's pretty good. I feel like I'm not going to be able to sprawl back and separate these hands. I'm just going to get straight up. And if Nick stayed here, that would be a terrible, terrible idea. I've got the height advantage. I could probably just rush right through him. But Nick's going to try to match height as best he can. And you can see I'm still using my elbow and sort of armpit pressure to stop Nick effectively circling to my back. When Nick takes his right ear and he runs me down, if I'm loose here, now we're in a much worse position. Obviously, I think being in a standing rear body lock is better than being in a body lock on the ground here. So I think we've still made progress even if you lose this grip. Ultimately, we don't want to lose this grip. So we've stood up and we've kept him here. We could turn this into a Yoko Sumigaeshi sweep again and an overhead sweep. So say we've stood up and we're here and we're not comfortable. I've got height and I've got momentum, so I could hop in and replace this hook. And from there, I want to hop in between Nick's legs. And we can take him over with a bit more momentum. Why this move is so effective is because you're messing with the height your opponent anticipates you to be at. We were down here, he probably assumed we wanted to stay down here. We stood up, he realized, oh shit, I've messed it up. And then when we dive straight back into the sweep, it's very hard to predict where you'll be next. So again, we've stood up and Nick's here, but I'm still collapsing his head to the best of my ability. We've gone from the ground to up top, so Nick obviously probably assumes that we want to be playing up here. But then immediately, we sweep him through with more momentum again. And when this happens to you, it's really almost distressing because you're trying to hold on to this guy that's getting up, dropping back down, getting up. It just messes with your basic expectations of what they can do from it. We can also do a throw from here, right? So just to see how this throw looks as we get up, right? Again, I start getting up and I feel Nick doesn't raise his hips at all. Again, if he raises his hips, we throw him. If not, just get up. So the way I feel this throw up is I run the other way. If I stay still, it helps Nick take my back. So I know he's chasing my back, so I'm running the other way. I'm gonna hop in line with his legs. I'm gonna grab his elbow so his grips are stuck, and I'm gonna start to toss him. I place my foot behind his leg, and I use my hip to bump him over the top. We'll see it in sort of live speed so you get a sense for it, but the fact that he's chasing me is what really helps. And we can really reverse the position from here. Another little hook we can do if we're really worried about being suplexed out of here is when I get up, if Nick gets close to me here, I can hook his leg. So now Nick tries to lift me, has a lot of trouble. What I usually try to do, he picks me up, realizes he can't throw me. The second he puts me down, we throw him straight away. So again, we've got two options from the standing position now. We go back to the Yoko Sumigaeshi, or we can just launch him if they're aggressively chasing our back. All right, like I mentioned, this position, we can hit submissions out of there as well, mostly front head submission attacks, right? So we'll sort of, I'll group all these together because these are all good options, and I'll try to layer them back and forth with which options would be the strongest. But again, we have to show all options because there are positions that are stronger, positions to hit guillotines from, but obviously when push comes to shove, time's running out, we need a Hail Mary. We need to know all of our options from all levels, just in case we need to pull a rabbit out of a hat, right? So the first one I'll talk about is basically, it's just a heisting snap, but we attack the front head straight away, right? So I just want you to remember that if we start to heist up from here and I can force Nick to let go of his hand, we want to attack high wrist straight away, right? So if we can separate those hands, put those hands on the floor, if someone lets go of a grip to post, they're going to post to their hands and probably try to seek height immediately. And to immediately transition into the high wrist, that's going to be a very, very strong attack from it. So the second we slam Nick's hands into the ground is a really great option to attack our high wrist. So we're bringing thumb through as high as possible, stuffing their head to the outside, and we're controlling the armpit here so that Nick can't pummel his left ear to my center chest. If I'm loose on the underhook here, he can pummel it. If I'm tight on this armpit grip, now his head's wedged. I'll just briefly touch on it because we've covered that in other instructions many times. High wrist is going to be your strongest one. It's best to attack it from here where we have that height advantage over our opponent. But we can attack arm ends as well, right? So let's look at it from this angle. The strongest guillotine is when we have a height advantage. But if we're playing outside here, and especially if our foot's outside, and we need to make something happen from here, we can switch and pop our hip inside to attack an arm in. I can easily transition from a lat grip to a chin strap. So if you look to the other side here, if I'm collapsing Nick's head to the ground, what do you think Nick wants to do? He wants to fight that by lifting his head, and when he does, we can sneak in a chin strap here. If Nick keeps his chin tucked, there's nothing there. But if I'm putting weight on his head, his natural reaction is to fight back, and we can secure a chin strap. So that's what I'm doing with my outside hands, right? So I'm collapsing his head, he fights back, I secure the chin strap. And I want to gain distance and get onto my inside hip. Obviously there's no submission here, but as I switch hips, I can now start to secure my grips. And the knee, that was basically a reverse knee, sort of reverse butterfly hook here, turned inside, and I'm catching his half guard leg. And if you can, if you look at my toes, wrap your toes around it here. We're gonna throw our top leg to the far hip. I try to place my heel into the hip pocket. So my heel's wedged in deep into the hip pocket. What I'm doing with my hands, the chin strap hand goes slightly deeper, and we reinforce our other hand over the top. And the key to an arm in is to curl everything in. My thumb's coming into his Adam's apple here. And then I'm gonna place weight onto the back of his head. So if I catch Nick here, I'm rolling my hands in, everything comes in tight, and we start to get the tap. But again, the reason why this one isn't as good as the other ones is when I switch back in, Nick can actually post his head on the ground forwards. And now I'm using a lot of muscular strength to try and break him down. So what I'd suggest, if you get here, rather than burn your arms out, we're gonna pummel this foot back in to a half butterfly hook. I clear my half guard leg, and I use it to post. To lead Nick over the top, I can simply secure top position, or if Nick starts to come up, this is where we can start chaining in other submission attacks. We potentially could secure it, forehead post, and finish with a one-handed guillotine where I keep the chin strap, I go back to the chin strap, and I retract my elbow as I hip in. But again, it's not going to be as effective. If I secure a high wrist with a height advantage here, obviously Nick's not going to be able to post his hand to keep his head strong here. So it's going to be much stronger finishing capability, but also less control. If you can imagine, because my leg remains inside of the half guard position, I've controlled his leg in a way that's going to limit his rotational escapes, especially if I get control over the far hip. So arm in, slower, less effective in a way, but also is a good one to catch people by surprise in this position. And sometimes they will concede to the bottom simply because of the submission threat, because all guillotines are harder to finish on bottom. So this is a situation where we're not having much luck with other options from reverse C. We collapse his head, we secure the chin strap, we threaten the submission. Either he concedes to the bottom, or we sweep him to bottom and we turn a submission attempt into a sweeping threat. And the third option is Nick Ortiz's favorite, called the cow catcher, which we can potentially catch out of here at. So this submission threat comes up when Nick throws this arm over the top. So when he throws it over the top, I want to take an underhook, and I want you guys to pay attention to how far I reach. I want to reach this far trap here. So when he throws it, I reach and I chin strap at the same time. So we're playing here, Nick throws it, and we secure chin strap and trap. And I use my left elbow to sweep Nick over. I post my head on the ground to switch hips. So I'm putting my left hip down and I start to walk in. And it's a combination of a chest compression and also a guillotine choke, right? So without Nick here, we're here. He goes to throw it. I reach and I lock everything up at the same time. I knock Nick over. I forehead post and I switch hips. And as I walk my hips into his chest, what happens is Nick's on his back here. If Nick's flat on his back and we're applying pressure, it's not going to do much. If his chin's brought to his chest and we apply pressure, it starts to strangle him. And what we do is we basically, this underhook is a pinning mechanism. If I had this without anything else, Nick's trying to move, it's a very effective pin. This guillotine grip acts as both a guillotine and a means to bring his head up. Just like if we were doing that bullshit move from Kezigatami, the key is that his head's coming up as our weight comes in. If Nick's head's flat here, there's very little pressure on his chest. So when we pull it up, that's what starts to suffocate him. So I want you to think of the same thing when we hit this cow catcher, right? So we're trying to get as high a wrist as possible. We're trying to reach for that far lap. We're gonna switch hips, and you can see how all these things work at once to secure the submission. Chest compression, guillotine, and also a great way to pin your opponent. And what's great about it is the defense of the position. If they do escape, I've never had someone escape technically. They explode, they freak out, they panic. All the crucial ingredients to drain an opponent or a training partner's gas tank. So it's one of those submissions we use as a sweep. Also a means to drain our opponent's energy levels. Guys, so we need to do an explanation of basically the final range of guard play, and that would be the short range. So we've covered long range, mid range, and short range. I consider short range, again, just a refresher, anytime my legs are intertwined in such a way with my opponents that they can effectively use it as a means to hold me down. So obviously when we're covering reverse Z, that's an entrance from closed guard. We show the entrance there, but really, because we are able to sit up so quickly, I consider it sort of a gray area between mid and sort of close range there. If from that reverse E, they were to flatten me out, then again, we're sort of more into that close range sort of area. But while we're sitting up, it's more mid-range. But again, that position comes up at a takedown defense, so it still really is a gray area. A true sort of close range positioning would be something like a half guard or a knee shield. Knee shield still, my legs sort of trapped in such a way that we're so close here. It's the ease at which I could get up. It's still quite difficult from here. I've still got so many steps, and especially if Nick's getting some sort of meaningful pin on me here, obviously I'm so far from my ability to get up. I would consider this sort of close ranges, right? So that's just a quick refresher. And really the overarching theme of this close range section is off balance and attack. And what we're really going to use is a lot of knee levers, a lot of what's classically called the John Wayne sweep, Mansoor Banui, the Giggler sweep, any sort of options from here that can destabilize our training partners or opponents, and then we immediately shoot into attack. And that attack, again, could just be standing up, could just be taking a shot. Non-traditional ways to get out of these positions. Let's look at the first position we can hit a knee lever from, and that would be from a knee shield or a Z guard. I got to give credit where it's due. Marcelo Mafra against Benson Henderson, Nogi Worlds 1 year. Obviously props. I think at the time Benson was still basically a UFC title contender, if not had the title, but was still competing in grappling. Marcelo Mafra, obviously professional, full-time grappler. They had a great scrap in Nogi Worlds, and there was one sequence where I saw how easily Marcelo Mafra was able to use a knee lever with elbow wrist control to off-balance Benson and play back and forth between the dilemma of the sweep and the back take. So let's have a look at how he did it. Look at our basic knee shield here. For us to effectively hit a knee lever from this position, what I'm going to have to do is make my lower foot shallow. And it's got to be shallow because what I've got to stop is Nick's ability to rotate externally his left foot. If he can rotate it externally, his other leg, this one pivots out, as in. So we've got to be able to stop this movement, right? If I'm going to send Nick in this direction and hit that foot pivots out, obviously no sweep there. So we need this leg to be shallow enough that when I use my knee to move his hip and my heel stomps to the floor, this leg can't pivot to follow, and that's how we're off balancing him from here. The key is the lower leg, right? So when we're playing a knee shield here, I can touch my feet together and create that movement where we've isolated his hip, he can't pivot, and we're able to send his weight into this direction. Just a little bit from a few angles before we talk about the upper body grip. So again, we don't want to be too deep because I'm not going to control his ankle. We don't want to be too shallow here because we're not going to be able to control his hip. We have to find a sort of a sweet spot in the middle there. And if you can see how I'm using 2 feet, I stomp the ground. I'm not bridging, I'm just turning my knees to the floor on the far side. And that's sending Nick in a direction in which he's not able to easily prevent it. But if you can see what he's doing, even as we're drilling this, he's using his hand to create a post. So he posts his hand on the floor, and that basically sets the limitations of what my legs can do. So what Marcelo Mafra did was he controlled a wrist with a grip tightly around the wrist, thumb up, and he controlled the elbow here. So it's a really great position to play, and he's able to use the element of surprise here to hit this swing. And obviously when I'm controlling this elbow and wrist, Nick now doesn't have a post, and I could send him over and immediately look for an underhook to control the position and pin him. But we can play back and forth here, right? Because we know that if we're going to send Nick's weight this way, his instinctual response is to bring weight back. And that's the beauty of this grip, is that I can use it to throw his arm in the other direction and take the back. So as I bring Nick's weight this way and he starts bringing weight aggressively the other way, I can throw his arm, climb up, and get immediately to the hip. So it's sort of building around the concepts we've been covering in this instructional, and that is to, when we're on bottom, be very aggressive, never accept bottom position. We're going to create an off balance that will either get us to the top or get us an ability to come up, secure the back, or wrestle to the top. So again, if we look at this 1-2 sort of combination here, if Nick accepts the sweep, it means he doesn't throw his weight in the other direction because we've controlled his post, because we're doing great knee lever technique. Nick has to be swept. What I want you to do, when he hits the ground, let go of the wrist, and as Nick starts to turn into me, secure an underhook to secure this pin here. That's how we're going to ensure that when we sweep him, we stay on top. But Nick obviously is going to know that he has to throw his weight in the other direction. And he's resisting hard. So instead of fighting directly with his resistance, we throw his arm in the direction he's throwing his body weight. I keep the wrist hoping that he stays posted on this so we can come straight up to the hip here. And we can start chasing this back here. Obviously, if Nick starts to get up, I want to keep weight into him and secure the back from this position. So basically, a 1-2 dilemma from the knee shield using the knee lever. He either accepts the sweep because we control the post, or he fights the sweep by throwing his weight in the other direction. We can come up to take the back. Again, you want to see in action, Benson Henderson versus Marcelo Mafra. All right, so we covered the knee shield, basically Z-guard, knee lever, Marcelo Mafra used against Benson Henderson, but of course we're still dealing with short or close range positioning here. We're using off balances to get up and get out of the position straight away, not playing from bottom, not accepting bottom position. So that's from a knee shield. Let's say they beat the knee shield. So obviously we still have opportunities for knee levers or off balances from here, but I really want to show just your basic 1-2 combo from here. And I'll also show and explain how we can use grips that Mansour Banui used. If you don't know who that is, you should do some research, watch his match in Korea against Khabib's teammate. He really reinvented how to get up from bottom in an MMA sort of setting. Obviously in MMA, everyone uses the cage to secure takedowns, and a lot of guys use the cage to get back up. But when we're dealing with there's Dagestanis, obviously experts in fence wrestling, experts in preventing someone using the cage to get back up, but because they were so focused in that area, Mansour Banui used knee levers, what he calls the giggler sweep, to create off balances in open space that allowed him to get back up. And I want to explain in detail why this worked so good against wrestlers. And it's built upon the foundation of a leg turk from a half guard position. They turk the leg so that they can't retract their leg and get back to their feet. But from a half guard position, you have two choices on top: inside knee on the floor, inside knee off the floor. One of those options leads to a knee lever. One of those options leads to a half butterfly position. And a wrestler using a turk from a half guard position to pin and control is essentially putting their knee in such a vulnerable position that the knee lever will be super effective. And Mansour was able to use that 4 or 5 times in this fight, where he kept getting taken down, but just like the theme of this instructional, he wouldn't accept bottom position, and he would use it to get back to his feet, and he ultimately won the fight. I think he won $1 million. Lucky him. We don't have that money in grappling, but let's talk about it from half guard here. So when I talk about Nick having 2 choices from a half guard, if he's controlling my upper body here, he can either place this inside knee on the floor, which creates that knee lever-like wedge for us, where we can go foot to foot, knee to knee, and we can start to whip our legs to the floor and not bridge. So we can start to whip and create an off balance here. Obviously, in a perfect world, I could trap his underhook, send his weight this way, and throw it. This movement will be more effective the closer I can get to his opposite hip. And I could even use my inside arm to help push his weight away from me. So it's more effective the closer I am this way. If I'm stretched out here, I cannot really whip my legs in any meaningful way. So if Nick really has a strong crossface here, and I'm really stuck in this direction, you see how the knee lever, I'm never going to move the guy. The closer I can get to his opposite leg, the stronger this whipping motion will be, and the more effective I can take his weight in this direction. That's the ultimate goal, is we sweep him. But really, when Nick senses this movement, he posts his right hand on the ground, which means that we can now win the underhook battle. So obviously it's a classic movement. Everyone's seen this, they post, and we can use that to start getting into our inside hips, potentially trapping our leg, playing a traditional half guard game. But the goal is, if we're getting pinned here, as Nick goes for the pin, move into his crossface as hard as possible. We want to have our head the opposite side to the sweep. That's going to mean our knee lever creates a stronger wedge on his knee on the floor, and we can sweep him over the top. If I'm on top of Nick here, what a lot of wrestlers do, especially for MMA, is when we get to this position, a lot of times MMA guys will frame, they'll start to get up to an elbow and they'll try to rip this bottom leg out straight away. So what a lot of wrestlers will do is they'll hook that leg and they'll sprawl into it here. And now when Nick's trying to get up and rip his leg out, I've created a sort of a Turk pressure on his leg. But what that means is it puts myself in a super vulnerable position to a knee lever. I'm giving him the perfect knee lever here, because you can see I'm creating that wedge in and of myself. So again, what was happening at Mansour Banui against the Dagestani fighter he faced, he would be trying to pin Mansour here, and Mansour would use it to immediately off balance and then have a scramble where they both ultimately end up getting up, or Mansour would be on the ground. So I'd say knee lever is something you really need to be good at for MMA, something underutilized in MMA, something that's very good against wrestlers. And obviously it's a great fight to watch to bring the idea that you can get back up in open space. A lot of people just would not even try to do that. They would just try to get straight to the cage. But obviously if the guy's a better wrestler against the cage, that's a great strategy. But what do we do if that inside knee isn't on the floor and we're still in a pinned position here? So if that leg's off the ground, there's absolutely no knee lever. I need this knee on the floor to create a strong wedge. And not just on the floor, but we need our head in the opposite direction, right? So when this knee's off of the ground, I use a half guard, a single butterfly hook from this half guard position, a half butterfly. And we do this pummel here, where the bottom leg covers the Achilles as the top leg pummels in. Why do we cover the Achilles? Because if I open my legs to pummel, Nick just steps out. Straight out of there, straight to a pass. So when we're in this half guard position, the knee's off the ground, we cover the Achilles. So now when he tries to step out, it's not there, and we can secure our half butterfly hook here. What we want to do with our hands, if we change angles here. So we've secured the lower attack here. We want to frame back in front of the head. And I want to connect thumbs under the armpit here. And what we're going to do is, Nick's giving me a good crossface here. I've got to tuck my chin. If my chin's high, creates a wedge under his shoulder here. I've got to tuck my chin in to give him less purchase on my head. I'm going to remove the foot that covers the Achilles, stomp that to the ground. I'm going to kick and throw everything to my left as I tuck my chin. That gives us leg entries, but even if you're not that way inclined, it gives us the ability to start chasing a takedown straight away. So another great strategy from this sort of half guard dilemma here. Obviously, ultimately, I wouldn't want my arms here to begin with. If we're in half guard, we're already creating good frames, but our thumbs are meeting under the armpit here. We cover the Achilles, we pummel our foot in. So again, we're in a half guard, knees on the ground, knee lever. Knees off the ground, cover the Achilles, pummel the butterfly hook in. If you're having trouble pummeling the butterfly hook in, you're not flexible enough, what I want you to imagine is use the Achilles foot, the grip on the Achilles to kick it out a bit. I can push to make space. Everyone should be able to find the space from here. Nick's very tight, I just stretch that Achilles out. The foot that was on the Achilles goes on the floor, we tuck our chin, and we throw everything overhead. Once he's off balance here, obviously you can see great leg attacks, but we can pendulum up, and we've already got that leg shelved. And if I stay here, Nick's probably gonna get away. I wanna get a height advantage and secure the rear body lock. So we got some options from half guard bottom there. Knee on the floor, knee lever. Knee off the floor, half butterfly off balance. But again, don't play from the position. Immediately go into whatever attacks would be your preference from that position based on your opponent's position. Guys, I'm throwing this in, this little Easter egg in here, a little MMA history piece is Luke Stewart versus Andre Galvao. Luke Stewart, earlier in the match, used a couple of knee lever techniques from a half guard position to get reversals on Andre Galvao. But what impressed me most was his bullshit reversals under side control. He hit it 2 times. You're going to see this move and you're going to think, bullshit. It probably is bullshit, but the fact that it worked on a level of athletes such as Andre Galvao just goes to show using something that someone doesn't expect, even if it's a low percentage move, can be very effective. And I just want to demonstrate this move because it's little been seen, little been taught. I've only ever seen it hit 2 times, and both times were in the MMA fight. Luke Stewart hit it. I believe Luke Stewart's a retired Ralph Gracie black belt. He's a tattoo artist now, so obviously he's skilled in multiple areas. But yeah, he used this move obviously against high-level guys, so we have to give it the respect it deserves. Mixing side control here, right? The first hook Luke Stewart's going to take, and why it is essentially a knee lever, is because he hooks the leg here. And we've all seen this before. Some guys will use this hook to extend and get a knee back in. But what was really unique about the way Luke Stewart used it was he used it basically like a knee lever. He's hooking the leg and stomping his heel to the ground. So it means that Nick can't pivot his right foot internally. It's stuck externally here, right? And he uses that to bridge. Obviously it's planted into the ground. He can start to bridge his hips up. What he did with the other part of his body was he firstly hooked the leg. He hooks the leg and concedes to an arm triangle position here. Obviously, I don't want to concede to the arm triangle and then try to hook the leg, because if I don't get it, I'm going to get straight and look like an idiot, right? So when we're here, what we want to do, we find that leg hook. We bring our arm through. We're going to do a bridge over our right shoulder here, but we're going to block both this arm and this leg. So everything pulls back in. I have to block this leg because if I want to send Nick this way and you post this foot on the ground, it's going to be a counter force in the opposite direction to where we want to go. And why I have to block this arm is obviously if I want to send Nick this way, he could just post this arm on the ground. I'm never going to bridge him over the top. So Luke Stewart's here, he's got good defensive frames. When he has the leg trapped, we take that nice little hook here. He bridges and blocks both these hooks. Nick has nothing to prevent this sweeping position here. And we can come on top to secure the sweep. But it's just to show what's possible with the knee lever here, with that sort of mechanism, right? So let's look at a few different angles here. This angle, you should be able to see how I'm able to hook the leg and I'm able to block both posts here. So aggressively blocking this outside knee, aggressively blocking the elbow. To get a bridge, you see how Nick's not able to use anything to come back on top here. He can't pivot with his right foot, he can't pivot with his left foot, he can't post with his left foot or his left arm, and we're able to get on top. So look at it one more angle here. So we take the hook, then we can see the arm triangle. The arm triangle is merely a means to block this post. We block the knee here, we bridge off our toes, and I turn over that right shoulder, and we're able to get to the top position. So obviously I had to throw it in there because Luke Stewart was effectively using knee levers from a half guard, which everyone's seen. One of those moves, easy to see, hard to actually make happen without knowing the subtle details. But he was able to utilize this technique to get a knee lever reversal from side control. Not once, but 2 times, which to me was incredible to do it against an athlete of the caliber of Andre Galvao. All right, let's talk about a position I call the false half guard. I call it the false half guard because basically half guard without the underhook. We still have control over the leg, we still shelf a leg, and we're gonna come straight up to turtle. So this position will save you a lot of times from your opponent passing your guard. Sometimes I'll even scramble to this position out of takedown battles, but the idea is basically we look like we're in a bad position. Ultimately, it's gonna look like we're in turtle, but really we have put ourselves in a position that leaves our opponent's leg vulnerable. They've got a strong position except for one aspect of their body, and that is their inside leg. And unless they can free that leg, they can't take advantage of the position they're in. So let's take a look at what it is and how we could get there. So we enter this position as Nick basically tosses my legs to the side and he's coming in to pass it. He's coming in and getting low to pass. The first thing he wants to stop me turning in is this crossface. If he secures this crossface, obviously that's blocking me turning in. So as Nick starts to come down, I'm taking a cross grip and I immediately straight arm with this cross grip. Obviously it's bent, we're talking about muscle versus muscle. Nick's gonna overpower me here. So I catch that arm and I hit it with a straight arm. What we're gonna do next is my inside arm is going to, as Nick starts to pass, is reach through and secure this ankle here. So these are the 2 grips we've got to secure. And I start to come up to turtle and I trap that leg just like we would in a half guard position. So you can see if I didn't have Nick's wrist here, he's basically in turtle, except he needs to free this leg to basically use this position in any meaningful way. If Nick tries to submit me, tries to take my back, anything, he's gonna find that unless he can free this leg, he's stuck. So if we look at it, Nick's passing me here, throws the legs out of the way. I catch the crossface arm with a diagonal grip. So I'm grabbing the crossface arm from the opposite side and I'm reaching through to secure the ankle here. So if Nick lifts his right leg and his right hand, I reach through and I grab this ankle. And as I come up, I trap it, I shelf it. Obviously, if we're in half guard, I've basically taken a half guard hook here. But instead, we're blocking the crossface, we're trapping the leg the same way, and we're coming straight up. Once I get up, I immediately cover this knee. What I don't want is Nick to knee slide out, and now he's basically in a front head or a turtle, whichever position he would prefer. So as soon as we get in, we've hooked our leg, we've shelved it, and I'm sitting on it. I'm, to the best of my ability, still controlling this wrist and still covering this knee. And now as Nick's trying to fight out of this position here, he realizes that his leg's basically in a vulnerable position here, and he's not sure exactly what his instinctual response would be to clear this position. Got a few more times here. The legs get out of the way. Nick's coming in to pass. We block the crossface, trap the inside leg, and immediately come up to what looks like we're conceding turtle, but because we're controlling this inside leg, his options are very limited from here. So this is a position that basically has come about because I want to avoid getting scored on, but I also don't want to turtle and risk getting my back taken too quickly. So it's a tricky position for your opponents to deal with. Again, another unorthodox style of guard we're playing today that really our opponents or training partners aren't going to be used to dealing with, and they're going to hesitate before they make a firm decision. If I put Nick in a position he's comfortable in, he already has a plan A, and it's almost instinctual. He doesn't even have to think about it. He just goes straight there. But when we put people in positions they're confused in, positions they feel vulnerable in, especially Nick was so close to a dominant position, and now he's in a position he's unsure of, that he feels he could potentially get reversed from, he hesitates, and that gives us opportunity to turn a defensive position, and we will begin an offensive cycle out of that. But again, it's a turtle, but we've trapped this leg, and that means that he has few options until he clears that leg. All right, guys, option one, the most simple option, probably the lowest percentage, but initially, again, because it's an unorthodox position, it can work very well when someone's not used to this position. But once you hit it with them a couple times, once they see it, they're going to be onto it, they're going to defend it straight away. But again, it needs to be said, this one does work, especially if your opponent's slow and maybe sort of worried about why their knee's trapped or how their knee's trapped, right? So it's basically me turning the false half guard into the dogfight, right? So it's Nick's passing me here, same thing. He gets around the legs. We block that cross face. Our inside arm reaches through to grab the leg, so we can't hide that leg. As we come up, and you can see how I'm coming up, I'm blocking Nick's knee immediately. So because I'm controlling his wrist and I don't have an underhook, he doesn't have an ability to block my underhook here. So if I'm really quick here, I can retract my elbow and come around the hips. And now we've turned it into a dogfight, essentially. And obviously we've trapped our leg, so we've turned it into a traditional dogfight. But it's the speed at which, obviously if Nick breaks my grip first, secures a body lock, now I have no choice but to fight out of this false half guard position. But again, I can't emphasize this enough. How many times someone's been here, even experienced black belts? Very, very rare. So again, they're gonna have a slow reaction time. So when I cover this wrist, I can quickly pummel the arm out. We can even get straight to a body lock here and turn this into a very dominant position. So we've secured a false half guard. We've turned it into the dogfight purely based on the element of surprise or the fact that they're not used to this position. But the second we get it, we are covering the knee. I don't want to let go of the knee to let go of this because Nick might knee slide out. And as I go for an underhook, he's reversed the position, whether that be to the back or to the front head. So this one will have, you definitely need some speed work here. So as Nick passes, I block that crossface, turn in, reach through, secure the inside leg. I shelf it, so I take my Achilles. You can see as I'm coming up, I'm covering his knee with my elbow. That elbow becomes my hand. I rip my arm back, and we immediately secure an underhook. So again, now we're basically in a traditional half guard position, but because he hasn't seen this coming, he's not throwing a traditional whizzer. A traditional dogfight position, if I've come up, he's got a very strong whizzer immediately. But if I'm already coming up and he tries to secure a strong whizzer, you can see that my thumb is already so deep that he cannot really secure the whizzer. Compare the dogfight position when I'm here, or even hand on the floor, as opposed to if Nick's looking for a whizzer as I'm coming up from a traditional half guard. Nick throws on a strong whizzer. You can see the difference here. I cannot reach far with this right hand. But if we were here, when I throw this underhook, Nick tries to get a strong whizzer, you can see how deep my hand is, and his whizzer's basically dead at this point. I could start to circle, get him on his hands, and now we've got ourselves a rear body lock from Turtle. So this one has to be quick. They go for the pass, we secure the false half guard, immediately pummel, and we reach super deep. You're trying to get your thumb all the way across body here. The depth of this thumb, when you connect your hands, decides the power of his whizzer. All right, guys, so we're looking at the false half guard. The first option, our main priority, is to secure the underhook. But if we do not secure the underhook and our opponent's able to secure a rear body lock and control us from here, what we want to do from there, the first priority from when we miss the underhook, is to shelf the leg. So let's have a look at it briefly. We've locked the crossface, we catch the inside leg. Let's say I come up, Nick strips the grip and secures a rear body lock. So what I want to do again is now probably commit 2 arms to the front of this knee. 1 arm's pretty good, 2 arms is really going to trap the knee. Because again, the worst thing I can do from here is allow Nick to slide out. And if he slides that knee out, now he's turned this position to a very dominant position, right? So when we shelf this leg and Nick secures a rear body lock, we control the knee. Now Nick's trying to slide out. That knee's trapped. What I want to do is I want to apply pressure with my hip into Nick's hip. So I want to start to come up on my outside leg and I'm pushing my right hip against Nick's left hip here. And I'm going to remove my outside hand and start to reach back. I don't just reach back for the ankle hip, I reach back for the knuckle of the big toe. That's going to be the weakest point at which I can control this ankle and foot here. And I'm going to start to lift that leg. You can already see what it's doing to him. It's applying so much pressure into him that he wants to release the grip. And I'm going to pull that leg and shelf it on my hip here. And now there's nothing really going to stop me from securing an underhook and chasing Nick's back here. Nick cannot commit 2 hands to the body lock here because he's falling forward. So when we want to commit to this underhook, I'm going to do a pass off. So we shelf the leg and I'm blocking the knee. Left hand comes to Nick's left knee and I'm going to place my hand to Nick's far hip. Or if this leg's off the ground, he's a bit higher up, I'm going to get my shoulder behind his butt here. So we're driving weight into him. I can pick up these legs and start to circle to return him to the mat. Or if we come back, so I've shelved this leg here. If he's staying low, I'm going to secure the far hip, keep weight into him so he keeps those hands on the ground, and secure a rear body lock of my own. So let's take a look here. We block the crossface, secure the inside leg. We shelf that leg, Nick strips the grip. He can't get an underhook, so he secures a body lock. 2 hands on the knee. We have to prevent him sliding out. I start to come up on my outside leg to drive weight into him here. I reach back and I grab the knuckle of Nick's big toe. That allows me to overpower the leg and attack his weakest point here and shelf that leg here. I keep my chest on it. If we're loose, he rips his leg out. So when we trap this leg, you can see I'm placing my ribs heavy on top. Obviously, here will be very difficult for Nick to spin back to guard because he's going to break his leg. If he turns to his left too aggressively, he's going to injure his leg. If he turns the other direction, he's just conceding the back. We've given him a dilemma where the only choice he has is a bad choice. That's to expose his back. So again, we do that pass off here. Left hand replaces the right. My right hand reaches for that far hip. I keep weight forward. I keep him on his hands. And I start to circle to secure the rear body lock of my own. So this is one of our best options when we secure a false half guard, but we miss the underhook. We end up stuck in a rear body lock, but we're able to use and manipulate the inside leg in such a way that they have to release the body lock to post or to protect the torque on their own knee. All right, guys, let's look at another option from the false half guard. When we come up and our opponent secures basically a body lock, we lose that underhook battle. So we'll come up, Nick's passing again, block the cross base, secure the inside leg. We come up, we're covering the knee, Nick secures a body lock here. So Nick has one of 2 reactions with his outside leg. He can stay on 2 knees, which I would say would be more of a atypical jiu-jitsu response, or he can bring that leg up and post on it to put weight into me here. So what we're going to look at in this first part is how do we deal with the knee when it's on the ground. That knee being on the ground is actually a huge vulnerability for Nick. And what I can do is I can take my inside hand, my right arm, I can throw an overwrap. So I move into Nick and I secure that leg. Once that leg's secure, Nick tries to stand up, he can't. We've trapped this leg in here. I'm gonna post on my outside hand and I'm gonna start to run into Nick. So even if Nick tries to keep his balance here, we can even take a head post for extra support. We're able to knock him over because his hands are preoccupied with my body and he can't post with his leg to block it. Looks super simple, but it's super effective here if we ever get that overwrap. So if that leg's trapped and Nick's keeping his knee on the ground, I'm gonna move and throw elbow deep. I really am trying to pull his legs together here. We know if Nick's base is wide here, he's stable in either direction. But when we throw this overwrap, I'm trying to pull his knees together here. So now when Nick's knees are together, he's trying to keep his balance here. I can run over the top and use the overwrap to take the top position. Seems like a low percentage move, but if you can pull someone's knees together, we can knock them over. This leg's trapped. We trap this leg with our other arm and just run into them. They won't be able to keep their balance. All right, guys, so we covered the overwrap attack when our opponent leaves his far knee on the floor. But again, we're dealing with wrestlers, people with strong positional grappling. They're going to want to drive weight into you here. Good people, when you're on bottom, are going to make you feel their weight and carry their weight. So the best way to make me carry weight from here is obviously if Nick or your opponent were to stand up with their outside leg. So if I'm in this position with Nick, we come up and Nick wants to make me feel his weight. This outside leg's going to come up. And he's sort of driving me in this direction because he's hoping that that forward pressure is going to alleviate the torque on his knee to some extent. But when he drives weight this way, and that again is the purpose of having this outside leg up, we can do the fat man roll, the mucky komi roll, right? But we have another layer to it because I've got his leg trapped. So I can secure his wrist on this side and I can try to roll in between his legs here. And here, when we're beginning this roll, with that leg trapped, I can use my hips to bring Nick through here. So with this leg trap, you can't slide it out, and I'm applying hip pressure. So when we get on top here, we're securing that far hip, but do not let go of this hand here, the hand we had on the hip. If I let go of this hand here, Nick rips that back and starts turning into me here. And we have an issue, a battle for top control. When we're coming up from this angle, I want you to keep the wrist. If I keep the wrist and turn into Nick, it forces Nick flat on his back. So Nick's trying to turn into me. Nick's trying to turn in. As long as we have that wrist, it's going to be very difficult. But if I don't have that wrist, we can both turn in. And then we have a scramble out of here. So I want you to keep that wrist as long as possible here. So we're here, Nick starts driving weight in. I immediately grab the wrist and I look between his legs while keeping this leg trapped. As I roll through, we get to that far hip, Nick's trying to turn in. Keep it, free your leg, start sliding back. The hand that's on the wrist, once you consolidate top position, place that in between his hips here. And we're gonna secure the top position. Basically your classic fat man roll, your classic makikomi roll, classic Zengo roll, and we reinforce it by trapping the leg and rolling through. And so long as you keep that wrist, you're gonna end up in top position.